The glass doors of Wellington Tower reflected Marcus. Kane's face, a man who had everything except the one thing money couldn't buy. What he discovered on the 42nd floor would shatter every wall he'd built around his heart. Marcus Kane didn't believe in leaving work early. The 53-year-old real estate mogul had built his empire on 18-hour days, cold coffee, and colder negotiations. His philosophy was simple. Time was money, and every minute away from the office was $1 left on the table. But today his assistant had triple-booked his afternoon, a rare scheduling disaster that sent him home at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. The penthouse elevator hummed as it climbed toward the 42nd floor. Marcus loosened his tie, already planning to use the unexpected. Free time to review the Thompson acquisition files. His reflection in the polished steel doors showed a man with silver-streaked hair, expensive suit, and eyes that hadn't softened in years, not since his wife, Catherine, had died 5 years ago, leaving him alone with their daughter, Emma. Emma. His chest tightened the way it always did when he thought of her. At 16, she should have been worried about prom dates and college applications. Instead, she spent her days in a wheelchair, her world limited by the cerebral palsy that affected her speech and mobility. Marcus had hired the best nurses, bought the finest equipment, transformed half the penthouse into a medical paradise. He'd given her everything except his time. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus stepped into the marble foyer of his home. He expected silence, maybe the distant murmur of Emma's afternoon nurse. What he heard instead made him freeze. Laughter, his daughter's laughter, that beautiful, uninhibited sound he'd almost forgotten she could make. Marcus moved quietly toward the sound, his Italian leather shoes silent on the hardwood floors. The laughter was coming from Emma's room, mixed with a man's deep voice. His protective instincts flared. Where was Mrs. Chen, the nurse? Who was in his daughter's room? He reached the doorway and stopped cold. The scene before him defied everything. He thought he knew about his carefully controlled world. Emma was in her wheelchair by the window, afternoon sunlight painting her face gold. But she wasn't alone. Roberto Martinez, the evening janitor, a man Marcus had passed in hallways 1,000 times, without really seeing, was kneeling beside her wheelchair. Between them, spread across a makeshift table of cardboard boxes, was an elaborate art project. "That's it, Emma. You're doing amazing." Roberto's voice was warm with encouragement. "Now just a little more blue right here. Yes. Look at that sky you're creating." Emma's hand, which trembled with the effort of fine motor control, held a paintbrush. Her movements were slow, unsteady, but Roberto had rigged a special holder that helped stabilize her grip. On the canvas before her was a painting. Marcus stood transfixed. His daughter was painting, creating, her face glowed with concentration. And joy, emotions. He couldn't remember seeing there in years. "Mr. Martinez," Emma said slowly, her words requiring effort but clear. "Tell me, about Peru, again." "Ah, mi pequeña artista." Roberto smiled, his weathered face crinkling with warmth. "In my village in the Andes, we had mountains that touched the clouds. My mama, she would paint them every evening just like this. She always said that God gave us eyes to see beauty and hands to capture it. Your hands, Emma, they're capturing something beautiful." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. This man, this janitor he'd never bothered to know, had taught his daughter to paint, was spending his time before his shift began, bringing beauty into her world. Roberto adjusted the canvas angle. "You know what my mama also said? She said everyone has a gift. Some people's gift is making money. Some people's gift is making art. And some people's gift is seeing the light in others. You have the gift of light, Emma. When you smile, the whole room gets brighter." Emma's laugh came again, and Marcus had to grip the doorframe. When was the last time he'd made his daughter laugh? When was the last time he'd sat with her and talked about anything beyond doctor's appointments and therapy schedules? "Roberto?" Emma's voice was soft. "Why are you so kind to me?" The janitor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of lived truth. "Mi hija, my daughter Sofia, she was just like you. Beautiful, smart, trapped in a body that didn't work the way she wanted. She had cerebral palsy, too." Marcus's breath caught. "Had? Past tense?" She loved to paint, Roberto continued, his hand steady as he guided Emma's brush to the water cup. Every day after I worked my 2 jobs, I would come home and we would paint together. She couldn't hold a brush at first, so I made holders, just like this one. We tried 20 different designs until we found one that worked. Where is she now? Emma asked. Roberto's silence stretched long enough that Marcus felt his heart break for this man. He'd never really known. She passed away 2 years ago. She was 17. Roberto's voice cracked but held, an infection her body couldn't fight. But Emma, every day I spent with her, every painting we made together, those were the richest days of my life. Not because of money or things, but because of love. Because I showed up. Because I saw her, really saw her, as the miracle she was. Tears were streaming down Emma's face, and Marcus realized his own cheeks were wet. When I see you, Roberto said gently, wiping Emma's tears with a careful hand, I see Sophia's light. And I think, if I can bring a smile to your face, if I can help you create something beautiful, then maybe Sophia's light keeps shining in the world. Maybe love doesn't end. It just moves through us to others. I wish my dad... Emma started, then stopped. What about your dad? Roberto asked gently. I wish he could see me the way you do. Not as something broken that needs fixing, just as me. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd built an empire, commanded boardrooms, negotiated billion-dollar deals, but he'd been so busy trying to fix his daughter that he'd forgotten to simply see her. Marcus stepped into the room. Emma? Both Emma and Roberto turned, startled. Roberto immediately stood, his face draining of color. Mr. Kane, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. I should have asked permission. I was just... You were showing up, Marcus interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. You were seeing my daughter. Really seeing her? He walked to Emma's wheelchair, then did something he hadn't done in years. He knelt, got down on her level, looked directly into her eyes. I'm the one who should apologize, Marcus said, taking his daughter's hand. I've given you everything except what you needed most. My time, my presence, my ability to see you not as a condition to manage, but as my beautiful daughter, with dreams and light and gifts to share with the world. Emma's eyes widened, filling with fresh tears. Marcus looked at Roberto. This man he'd passed 1,000 times without acknowledgement. You've given my daughter something priceless. You've shown her and me what it means to truly care for someone. Not with money or the best equipment, but with presence, with time, with the willingness to see someone's soul. Mr. Kane, Roberto struggled for words. How much do I pay you? Marcus asked. Roberto looked uncomfortable. $12 an hour, sir. That ends today, Marcus said firmly. I want you to come here every afternoon. Teach Emma to paint. Talk to her. Share your stories. Help her see the world beyond these walls. I'll pay you whatever you were making at your other jobs combined. No, double it. But more than that, I want you to teach me, too. Teach me how to show up for my daughter the way you have. Roberto's tough, weathered face crumbled with emotion. Sir, I don't need... Please, Marcus said. And the word, one he so rarely used, came from the deepest part of his heart. Please help me learn to be the father she deserves. Emma reached out her trembling hand and touched her father's face. Daddy, she said, the word she hadn't used in years. I just want you. Not your money, you! Marcus pulled his daughter into his arms, wheelchair and all, and wept. He wept for the years he'd hidden behind work, for the connection he'd nearly lost forever, for the grace of coming home, early on an ordinary Tuesday, and discovering that wealth had nothing to do with bank accounts and everything to do with presence, with seeing, with love. Roberto stood quietly, tears on his own cheeks, bearing witness to a family beginning to heal. That evening, instead of returning to the office, Marcus sat with Emma and Roberto until the sunset painted the sky the same, colors on Emma's canvas. They talked about Peru and dreams and the paintings they would create together. Marcus learned that Roberto had been sleeping 4 hours a night, working 3 jobs to pay off his daughter's medical debts. He learned that kindness wasn't something you could delegate or purchase. It was something you had to choose, every day, with your presence and your heart. Within a month, Marcus had established the Sophia Martinez Memorial Art Foundation, funding art programs for disabled children across the city. But more importantly, he came home every evening at 5 o'clock. He learned to paint alongside his daughter. He learned that the most valuable currency in the world wasn't in his investment portfolio, it was in the sound of Emma's laughter, in the light in her eyes when he truly saw her. Roberto became more than an employee. He became family. The father figure Marcus learned from, the bridge that connected a wealthy man to his own humanity, and Emma bloomed. With her father present and Roberto's encouragement, she created art that sang with life. Her paintings began selling at local galleries, not because of pity, but because they carried the unmistakable mark of a soul who'd been truly seen and celebrated. Years later, at Emma's college graduation, she'd studied art therapy to help other disabled children. Marcus would stand beside Roberto and realize that the richest day of his life wasn't when he'd made his first million. It was that Tuesday afternoon when he'd come home early and discovered what true wealth looked like. A janitor kneeling beside his daughter, teaching her to paint, showing up with a love that asked nothing in return. Because in the end, we're not measured by what we accumulate, but by how we see each other, how we show up, and whether we have the courage to kneel down and witness the light in another human soul.